Hi, I'm Sheri Hauser, brand steward at Victoria Truth Center, and I'm here with my beloved co-lead, Reverend Lesia Kohut.
Thank you, Sheri.
And here we are, episode 13 of What's Up Spirit, where we gather together to ask ourselves, what's up, Spirit? And I'm just going to start by saying, as we have begun this 6th month of our shared contract terms together, doing brand new things that we've not endeavored to do before with the Victoria Truth Center, that I just want to comment for our audience who hopefully have all met you either in person or virtually through the work that we've been streaming and the events that we've been producing together. But I've been watching, and at last night's Elevate, the way you were engaging and enrolling community members to come on board and be a part of this sanctuary that we're building, like it's really impressive. And uh and there's no end in sight. I see you scheduling new workshops, ways of offering your skill set um, to the community, and it's so impressive, and it's a real thrill to be by your side on this
Thank you.
journey.
Thank you. I on the heels of last night's Elevate, I feel like, the namesake of that evening was really what was happening. And I just feel with every single Elevate that we have right now, thanks to the people who are showing up, the musicians that are now part of the experience, the energy that is building, the energy and the music that the space itself is calling into itself and having life breathed into it, and like, the entire space, the building, all of the stuff is coming alive. I just feel so honored and so thrilled and so delighted to be part of this unfoldment, to be part of the inspiration, but also part of like what's happening, and what is coming up, what is bubbling up as this new evolution of the Victoria Truth Center community. And knowing that I'm one of the newer people and don't have history with it like you do, and several other people do, to honor that and to pay homage to, what has been, and then to bring in the new, and then to be open to whatever it is that wants to happen next. um it's just, it's so exciting, and for me is just what I experienced when I experienced the call to ministry almost 8 years ago. Just opening up and stepping up in service and just allowing for what wants to happen. And um and I am so delighted and so appreciate having you by my side as that is happening.
Oh,
So thank you.
yeah. Well, the little girl in me that remembers going to the Children's Church of the Golden Key when I first met Emma Smiley, uh, is always delighted and excuse me, and a little bit tickled when you pull out a quote from one of Emma's books, like you did last night with Magnificent Assumption. I think that's really, yeah, it's really special.
Yeah.
And it's the merging of the legacy with today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you're doing really well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And like you said, no end in sight.
No end in sight. Exactly. So in our meditation before we started recording, I was thinking about what's ahead for me, and and getting to do my favorite thing, which is facilitate authentic relating. And and I was asking myself the question, what am I calling in? Because on one hand, there's always a little bit of nervous energy coming into facilitating a new circle of humans for such an extensive immersion, a 20-hour workshop. And and then there's the part of me that reminded myself in the meditation that all you have to do is be in the practice. I just have to be in the practice. And what that means for someone not familiar with kind of the origins of authentic relating, it's a lot like revealing your present moment experience from trusting that whoever's there to receive it is going to feel closer in connection with you being honest and vulnerable than if you were pretending to be okay or have it all together or as if you know the answer and you're the smartest person in the room. So admitting whatever is coming up for you in the moment is the point. And so as I thought about what I wanted to share in today's episode, I was thinking about practicing the practices. And then I thought, okay, so imagining that some of our listeners, they don't know what the authentic relating practices are, and I'm not here to talk about that, but it's practice your practices. So, what is it that brings you joy or peace or ease or bliss? What is it that kind of gets you there? You know, is that time with friends? Is it quiet meditation? Is it journaling? Is it physical fitness? Is it adrenaline rush activities? Is it creating with your hands, building something? So I guess what I was finding is this idea that came through a new teacher of mine, Naomi Jason, who wrote recently that she's giving herself permission to love what she loves even more. Permission to love what you love even more. And that's what I wanted to share today with you and everyone else. Just wanted to plant that little seed of loving what you love even more.
And what a great seed that is. And how it just ties in so beautifully with what Glenn and I are practicing right now. Every month we tune into what is called the Abundant Good Journey with a friend of ours, Joselito Laudencia from California, from Los Angeles. And it's a community that he started almost 2 years ago. And so the first Saturday of the month, we meet for an hour and a half, and he's got a theme and he does a little presentation. We share, we might do little breakout rooms or something, but this month is all about self-care. And he did a challenge for the next 7 days. And so we're on day 5 today. One self-care practice, that you're practicing that day, and then post it in the group. And it's so interesting to see what people consider to be self-care or self-love. And sometimes it's a choice in, not choosing something. Sometimes, it is something that someone might think is very sort of self-care, like a bubble bath or a massage or taking time to meditate. And then sometimes it's something completely different. Like the other day, I know one of the ways that Glenn, my husband, receives love is to have a clean kitchen sink. And so before he came home from work, I washed all the dishes, put all the dishes away so that when he came home, that there would be a nice, clean, empty sink. And then that was also the day that I made a bunch of waffles. And so there are now gluten-free waffles in the freezer for weeks to come so that he can have snacks, or breakfast or whatever. And in doing something that I knew that he would appreciate, not because I wanted, kudos from him or like, hey, thanks kind of thing, but it's just because I knew that he would receive love in that way. For me, that was massive self-care for myself because it just felt so good to give in that way. And it all boils down to love. And so just being intentional, being present, and that's what I found myself doing as we were doing our sort of pre-meditation before we started the podcast, was I just started breathing. And then all of a sudden the phrase, love is all there is, came in. And then I would just let another phrase follow. And sometimes I found myself, it's like, okay, well, if that's what I'm saying, then I'm going to say this next. But then it's like, no, let's just be open to whatever love wants to be in the moment and express, and just tune into that, almost to the point of like this giddy I don't know what I'm going to say next kind of thing, but just being present for the spaciousness of how love wants to express itself. And so that's what I did with my 2 minutes, before we started the podcast. And it was so neat, just so neat to just surrender, which is kind of, a bit of our monthly theme at
Yeah.
BTC. And so, yeah, how lovely that you brought up, loving something that you love more, giving yourself permission, and just really honing in on what can love look like? How can love be expressed? How can one give love knowing that someone else receives love a certain way? So thank you for that little nugget.
Yeah, you're welcome. And as I think about that in the context of what you just shared, and I layer that over the mantra that I'm taking into my weekend course of simply practicing the practices,
Mm.
is that in a way I can even see how that is a self-love ritual, because being in the practice for me is about naming what is and not pretending that I'm anything other than exactly how I am.
Mhm.
And then it's even giving myself permission to be that version of myself, to not be some other version that um, might look better or sound better, from a seat of a facilitator,
Mhm.
where there's a power dynamic. What if all I have to do is just show up as I am, and that's enough? And that feels like self-care.
Mhm. Well, I also appreciate you saying that because I'm actually in that training this weekend and it's my first time. And I was sharing with one of our community members yesterday before Elevate started that there is something in me that is a little nervous about being in the room with other people. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but 20 hours worth of listening and sharing and tuning in and that kind of stuff, as someone who is normally at the front of the room, the one who's inspiring, the one who's leading, to be in, a different position, on this sort of like equal level with everybody who's in the room, and to share maybe, parts of me or more vulnerably than I do. Um, and then be able to like still, back on Wednesday at Elevate, get up in front of the room and just like, feel solid and confident. So, but then just exactly what you said, to just like be with what is and love it all, just love what is. Like, oh my God, what's his name?
Well, Byron Katie has a book called Loving What Is,
Yes.
or Katie Byron.
Byron,
Byron Katie.
Byron Katie.
Why,
Byron
why,
Katie.
why am I getting it backwards? She has 4 questions that she asks, and
Yeah.
and the collective of it is called The Work.
Yeah.
And
And
I
yeah.
know that there's a book called Loving What Is because I had it on Audible. And she was it was like a classroom style with people doing live interventions,
Yeah.
because they're telling themselves a story. And so she gets you to reveal what the story is that you're telling yourself. And then
Yeah.
she asks, is it true?
Yeah.
And question number 2, is it absolutely true? Like, how do you know that it's 100% true? And almost always you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't absolutely say it's 100% true. And then who would you be without that thought? And it's always some version of liberated or more free. There's some like, oh, I'm so much better without that thought.
Yeah.
And when I get to that part, I'm just like, oh, well, set the thought down, because that's where my practice with you and Emma Smiley from my youth around new thought philosophies, change your thinking, change your life. So
Yeah.
if there's this thought that I'm holding and it makes me feel bad, well, then it's not the right thought.
Yeah.
And so who's in control of setting it down and picking up an entirely different thought? I am. I am the
Yeah.
only one that
Yeah.
can change that thought, change the narrative. And so now I walk around with, like, tell the best story.
Yeah.
If it's not making me feel good, and if it doesn't make another person look good, it's the wrong story.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only story that deserves to be told is the one where everyone wins.
Mm. Well, on that note, it was Matt Kahn that I was thinking of, by the way. Whatever arises, love that.
Yes, Matt Kahn. That is his line.
Yeah. But yes, it was Byron Katie. So thank you for bringing that up, and that little tiny synopsis of the work that Byron Katie does, known as the work. So yeah, so thank you. You know, a whole lot of love, a whole lot of being present, a whole lot of practicing the practices, being very intentional and mindful and aware of what is happening in the moment, who I am in the moment. And if you want to know more of how VTC offers opportunities to practice that kind of stuff and engage in that kind of stuff, you can just go ahead to our website, which is www.victoriatruthcenter.org. All of our happenings are on there, and there's a way to get in touch with us, sign up for our newsletter list, and you can also go to the Facebook group, the Victoria Truth Center Facebook group, which just kind of exploded over the last 2 days. Huzzah! So yeah, we would love to hang out with you. We would love to engage with you, know what you are thinking, and a whole bunch more stuff. So thank you for being with us.
And if a weekend immersion isn't right for you, but you're curious about authentic relating, please know that VTC hosts Victoria's Authentic Relating Group game nights on first and third Sundays from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And they're facilitated by a trio of folks, myself included, along with Robbie and Bernice. It's always a good time.